Okay, so this is partially a continuation of what we did, but partially a side quest. Because I hear the elevator. That means Chaim's on his way. Because we just read the Rambam's program for learning, and because I mentioned in my Sunday share yesterday the Rambam's or we talked about the Rambam's views of learning Torah B'Ksav, Torah Peh, and Talmud. I wanted to do all the sources where the Rambam talks about learning Talmud to compare it to. We'll try to figure out what his view is, and then to like assess our learning of Talmud in light of the Rambam's learning of Talmud. So we're going to start with what we did in the Mishneh Torah. This is a new packet that just has all the sources combined. We're going to start with what we did in the Mishneh Torah. We didn't actually finish reading his curriculum, but we'll do that, and then we'll go to the other sources. Okay, so this is in Talmud Torah, Perek Aleph, Halacha Yud proper, I guess we have to start at. Ad Amosai Chayv Limod Torah, until when is a person obligated to learn Torah? Ad Yom Moso, until the day of his death. Shneimar, as it says, Ufen Yasuru Milvavacho Kol Yimei Chayacha, lest you remove them from your heart all the days of your life. And all the time that he doesn't involve himself in learning, he forgets. We raised two questions last time, which I forgot to think about over Shabbos, which is why does he have to specify that you have to do it till the day of your death? That's really all mitzvos. And then why does he quote the pasuk that seemingly is about not forgetting what your eyes saw at Har Sinai? So if anyone has any thoughts on that, then we could talk about it. But if not, then we can move on. I just forgot to think about it. I know we said we had a sketch of an approach last time that since it's a mitzvah that you're chayav in, yomam v'layla, like all the time, it has to be defined in some way. But we didn't really develop that idea. And oh, that's true. That's true. I was mixing it up. Yeah, that was for halacha ches. Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's go on to the main topic. V'chayev l'shalish zman l'midaso. A person is obligated to divide his learning time into thirds. Shalish b'torah shebechsav, 1/3 of his time in the written Torah. Shalish b'torah shebal-peh, a third in the oral Torah, which is the Mishneh Torah, like the Rav Makbili points out on the side. It's the halachic explanation of the mitzvahs in Torah shebechsav. Ushlish, and then a third. So we read this last time, but we didn't really analyze it. So Yavin v'yaskil. He should understand and comprehend achris davar mireshiso, the end of a davar from its beginning. V'yotzi davar midavar, and derive one matter from another, or one statement or one principle from another. V'yidama davar ladavar, and compare one statement or matter or principle to another. V'yadin bamidos shehatorah nidreshes behen, and apply the midos that the Torah is expounded through. Ad sheyeda heachu ikar hamidos, until he knows. It's a weird phrase. It always bothered me. Until he knows how is the essence of the midos. Plain pshat, just grammatically, is until he understands like how to use each one of the midos. Heach is like an operational term, like how, And then I'll just finish the sentence, then we'll go back and analyze each item. Heach yoti ha'asr v'mutter, and how the asr and the mutter are derived, and other things from the oral Torah, meaning how you get the practical asr mutter, chayav pater, tamei tahor from the Torah shebal-peh. The inyan zeh hu hanikra Talmud. This endeavor, this activity is called Talmud. Yeah, Chaim. So that's so okay. Yeah. So you mean in the intro to the Sefer Mitzvos? Or the Pirush HaMishnayos. Pirush HaMishnayos, he definitely says it, and I think he also says it in the first of the Shurashim in the Sefer Mitzvos that the midos are a mnemonic device. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a question. So the question, just to repeat, is doesn't the Rambam say that the midos are just like a mnemonic device? And so I mentioned that in the Rambam yesterday. The Rambam definitely holds that, and the Rambam seems to hold that the Rambam holds that, or at least the people who learn the Rambam seem to hold that the Rambam holds that. And I think it's pretty clear from the Rambam, but I guess others disagree. And so Chaim's question is, so is your question, why is the Rambam including that in Talmud? Right. I mean, first of all, just to be clear, he's not. Well, first of all, just to be clear, the midos, the application of the midos is part of Talmud. It's not the sum total of Talmud. Yeah. Yeah, so the when he says Yadin midos, that part is applying the Yugam midos and understanding them. But then, yeah, I mean, it could be part of it, but it's how you paskin halacha from the Talmud. Yeah, so that's kind of what I want to figure out. So let's, maybe I should have included other stuff in this also. We haven't yet read, I know I said this verbally, but we haven't read his definition of Torah Shabbat this year yet in the Pirush Mishnah. So let's just really quickly read that. Here, I'll get you copies. Yeah, this kind of skirts the topic of like what the Rambam sheet is on what Torah Shabbat is, but we won't go into that so much. Let me see if I can find it. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna display it on screen from the Alhot Torah, but I'm gonna actually use the Coptic translation because that's how I prefer my in the Hakdama. Yeah, the very first page of the Hakdama, maybe the second page if it has his poem. Let's see here. Hakdama, Mishnayos. Yeah, so it's after the poem. Oh, sorry, it's after the poem and after the dedicatory thing. It starts with da. Yeah. Again, we're just doing this as a refresher because it's relevant to the topic, but we're not going to go into the whole thing about how Torah Shabbat was handed down. Okay, so he says, I'm reading from the Kafech, and on screen is probably the Ibn Tivon. Okay, so he says, shekol mitzvah shenas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe Rabbeinu nitna lo im pirusha. That every mitzvah that was given to HaKadosh Baruch, that was given by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe, or that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to Moshe Rabbeinu, was given with its explanation. Hi HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer Lo HaMikra. God would say to him the pasuk, ve'achar omer lo pirushu ubiuru v'chol shekolal oso hamikra hamachukam. And then he would tell him, so he would tell him the pasuk, and then he would tell him its explanation and its clarification and everything that was included in the mikra hamachukam, the wizened pasuk. Okay, the pasuk that has wisdom. So, question: what exactly does that entail? Okay, but he gives an example. We're going to skip the Seder Halimud, even though that's important for other purposes. Skip to the next paragraph. V'hinei lecha mashal on the second page, left column. V'hinei lecha mashal. I'll give you a mashal. Amar lo Hashem basukos tishvu shivas yamim. Hashem said to him, "In Sukkos shall you dwell for 7 days." Oh, let me get this on screen also. Oh man, this is not even divided into paragraphs. Hold on. Basukos. Yeah, basukos tishvu shivas yamim. You should dwell in Sukkos for 7 days. So that was the pasuk. V'gam hodio Hashem Yisrael, and Hashem also informed him shesukkah zo chovas hazacharim v'lo hanakevos, that this sukkah is an obligation on men and not women. Ve'ena chova lecholim v'lo lechol drachim, and it's not an obligation on the sick nor on travelers. Ve'en mesachachin osa ela b'davar hatzamech ben aretz, and you only use for schach that which grows from the ground. Ve'en mesachachin osa lo b'temer v'lo b'meshi lo b'kelim. And you can't use wool or silk or implements. Even things that grow from the ground, like what is that? I think mats and clothing. And you should eat, drink, and sleep in it all 7 days. The dimensions can't be less than 7 by 7 handbreadths. And the height can't be less than 10 handbreadths. And then when the shliach, when Moshe came, he received this mitzvah and its clarification. He would get the pasuk that was written in scrolls, and then the pirush was all peh. So that's what the Rambam means by Torah Shabbat peh. So Torah Shabbat Ksav, you learn the psukim. Torah Shabbat peh, you learn the halachic interpretation. And then Talmud is you learn, going back to the Mishneh Torah here, Talmud, let's just say what all these things are. So Yavin v'yaskil, achris davar merishiso. Now, is that like a heading and everything else he describes fits under that heading? Or is that one facet of Talmud, and then Yotzi Davar Midavar is another facet, and Yidam Davar Ladavar is another facet? Because I like reading it as basically you understand how the final result gets from the beginning being the pasuk, and the final result being the yeah. Yotzi Davar Midavar is how you derive new facts, knowledge, conclusions from the things that you got Mipia Shmua, from the Torah Peh. And Yidam Davar is same thing. I mean, when he says davar, I also don't know if he means statement or thing. Like, for example, if you look at what our Talmud Bavli does, right? So I'm not sure though, because if you look at our Talmud Bavli, a lot of the actual process of Talmud is they compare this statement to that statement, of the different. I'm presumably he holds that that's what they were doing. They were doing Talmud, Then you have Yadim Midos Torah until you understand Ikra Midos. And what that seems to be is what the Rambam is calling the Mikra HaMechukam, which is that there's a Chachma to the Yidum Midos that will like give you a connection of Chachma between the text and the ultimate halacha, even if it's just a mnemonic device, meaning there is a Chachma there, but then the last part, the Rambam seems to say is the most important part, just given what he says for the Mishneh Torah, which is how the Asr and the Mutter come from the Torah Peh things. You can say that God said cholim are pater, but what is a chola, and how do you know, what fits under that, and to what extent is the Torah, etc. Yeah, Torah Peh is what we call halacha l'maisa or psak halacha, and then Talmud is everything. Right, or from things in Torah Peh to the applications, to the specific application. I should back that off for a second. Okay, let me just say something. There's what Moshe Rabbeinu got at Sinai, which is definitely Torah Peh. And then there's what the Rambam writes in the Mishneh Torah, which is full halacha l'maisa, psak halacha, which the Rambam also calls Torah Peh, So it seems like, and those two are not synonymous, meaning presumably like many more things are in the Mishneh Torah than Moshe got at Sinai. So it sounds like from the way the Rambam is describing it is the process of understanding how the halacha was derived and the process of deriving new halacha would all fit under the activity of Talmud. So like Chazal's generation of new psak halacha, which the conclusions of which would go under Torah Peh, would seem to be under Talmud, like the process of generating that new stuff. Yeah. Like I'll give you an example, a simple example. So Moshe was taught Yom Trua Yelachem, that was the pasuk, and then Torah Peh says mitzvah shofar. Okay, but then the Rambam says that it was forgotten how, and Moshe was presumably taught what Trua meant, but then the Rambam says that it was forgotten how to do Trua, whether Trua is the what we call Teruah or what we call Shvarim or Shvarim Teruah, right? And then the Rambam writes a whole seder of how we do this kios now, right? Which Moshe didn't get because Moshe didn't have a suffix. So what I'm claiming is what Moshe was explained about the pasuk is Torah Peh. And what the Rambam writes in the full form of the way we keep the mitzvah now is Torah Peh. And the process of figuring out how to do all of that is Talmud. Yeah, how they derived all of that, what you should and shouldn't do. Moshe did the Talmud, but was he given Talmud? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't see anywhere where the Rambam says he was given Talmud. Meaning, unless you say that that's like that God taught him, the conceptual understanding. I mean, he did that with science. I mean, he gave us eyes and ears and sensory empirical data collectors and said, figure it out yourself. Right, but the thing is, Right. But he gave us everything we need to live by it, though.
Well, do we know for sure? I just gave us the whole stock of it. Or is that as it is anywhere even close to it? Like, could it just be just here's the Torah, here's some ideas of it. Here's how you can get more stuff from it, and then figure the rest out yourself.
Well, the Rambam is emphatic. Just to answer both your questions, the Rambam is emphatic that everything we need to keep halacha, Hashem gave us, and that's why I'm arguing with the scientific thing. Is that if you say, for example, in medicine, let's say God gave us a medicine book that said how to cure all diseases, and then left us to understand through studying the body how those cures work. I wouldn't say that that's any deficiency on God's part, and that's the same thing here. Is He gave us Torah B'chsav and Torah Peh, which tells us how to keep it, and then mitzvahs Talmud Torah, which commands us to use our Tzelem Elokim to probe the infinite depths of the Chachmas of Torah. Sure. Right. So that stands to reason that he did give him, although I have a question on that also, which is right. Then you're stuck as soon as you lose a particular. Exactly. Yeah. Now this, of course, presumes, and I don't know if this is going to get into controversial controversy for anybody, is this presumes that there is one method of halakhic reasoning, like maybe not. I don't know. I mean, well, because we always speak about like the halakhic method, but maybe the halakhic method is no different than like the scientific method in that, there was a period where humanity went through like natural philosophy of like Aristotle, and then they went to the scientific method like Galileo, and then developing math, like meaning you'd definitely be a kofar b'Torah if you said that God didn't give us an explanation of the mitzvos, right? Like Torah Peh is definitely there. No, it is the I'm saying that the process, perhaps, like for example, in the same way that Rabbi Akiva has his methods of Shator and Nidreshes Behen, and Rabbi Yishmael has his method, like I don't know if they are arguing, and I'm saying I literally just don't know if they say, no, mine's the one that God gave Moshe at Sinai, and the other one's saying, no, mine is, or if they both said, look, this is our method that we've devised for how to extract the Torah Peh or reflect the Torah Peh conclusions in Torah B'chsav, and like we innovated the method, or like the Brisker Derech, where Chaim Soloveitchik invented the Brisker Derech. It's not from Sinai. Or the Bali Tosfos invented the Bali Tosfos. Like whatever Rabbeinu Tam was doing, no one was doing that before. Yeah. So like in other words, what the Rambam definitely says is God gave us the mikra, and then how to implement the mikra in practice, which is called Torah Peh. The method of analyzing halacha, or methods, or whatever, I don't know of a place where the Rambam says that he gave Moshe that method. Well, but why not though? That's what I'm trying to say. Is like.
And I like when you like explain that the concern and maybe then now it's figured out. It's a concern, and it didn't have everything that we would need like in the future. It's how we need it now.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't give us a way to figure out what kind of technology we need in the future. And I would see that as a decision.
Well, here's the thing, though, is that right.
God gave us a cure for everything.
Right.
Right.
Right. So I think that's a good segue to a possible answer that I have, which is let's say you did have such a medical book that had all cures, and you had someone who had that knowledge perfectly. I would argue that would also give him a lot of knowledge about the human body and about how medicine works, such that he would be capable of thinking about things without being given an explicit, this is the medical method, So I would think in a similar way, like a mathematician is going to have like, a very finely tuned intuition when it comes to mathematics and understand the principles of mathematics, So I would think that the same thing is true for Torah. If you got the entire corpus of Taryag mitzvos with all of their manifold halachos, then you would have a grasp of how it would work, even without God saying, I give you now, Moshe, the brisker derech, And the only reason I'm saying this is I've just never seen. I know we talk about it all the time, but I've never seen the Rambam say that God gave Moshe a method of halakhic analysis. I'm sure Moshe knew how to paskin, but did God give him that, or did Moshe just understand that from what he was taught? Also, frankly, I have no idea, even way later than Moshe, even in the Sanhedrin, whenever I read about the Sanhedrin and the procedures, and like they had their Masa Umatan, I have no idea what they were doing. Like they have the Eidos already, right? And then they're making arguments as to, so what were they even like? I mean, I think like there's a lazy sort of imagination-based assumption that it's kind of analogous to when you're in a Gemara shir and like different students are giving like svaras for the Gemara, but like it feels like it shouldn't be like that, because what they're doing is they're paskening these cases that presumably like these are already the greatest lamdanim in the entire land, and like they're having these extensive debate. It could be just that. I don't know. Like it could be arguing over which principles apply. So this is the big question mark. Yeah, the big question mark in my mind about like in looking back at what I see that in what Tanaim, the Amoraim and Tanaim, Gaonim, I feel like we have a grasp of what they were doing. Amoraim and Tanaim, we see what they did. But what were they doing before that, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, in terms of their learning of halacha, their paskening of halacha, their debate of halacha? It's just a big question mark in my mind. Right, I know exactly, but yeah, Oren.
If Moshe was given the Torah Shebechtav and halacha l'maisa, then what need would you have to even know how to get from one to the other? Like, why do you need that? If you already have both, then you don't need it. And a side question, or maybe it's an associated question, is how would you ever have to paskin halacha if you already have halacha l'maisa? Like you already know what you need to do. Why do you ever need to paskin anything?
Okay, good question. So the answer is that is for two things. First answer is you need this type of knowledge just as a Tzelem Elokim appreciating chachma, meaning that the point of halacha is not only to know what to do, but it's also to understand it for its own sake. That's Torah Lishma, that's Avas Hashem. And so the activity of Talmud is going to be delving into that and understanding the depths of it, But then on a practical level, you need it because when a new case comes up and either you don't know which particular, a case comes up that was not addressed in what you were given over, and you need to know how to apply it, then you need the conceptual underpinnings to be able to know how to paskin. And the first case of that, when's the first case of that? In Torah, the first case where they had to paskin, I think. I think there's one before that, yeah. That's definitely one of the first cases. No, I think before that.
Whoever Yidro said Moshe was doing too much.
That was it's unclear where the chronology of that is, right? Of Yisro's, proposing the whole thing. So I think it is with at the Miluim with Aaron's sons, when Aaron says, Moshe says you should eat the chatas, and Aaron says, if I ate the chatas today, then would that be pleasing to Hashem? And then Moshe admits to him. I think they said that was like that. I think that was before Pesach Sheni, because that was in the. It was at the end. They were still at Sinai. Yeah, right. I think so. Yeah. So that was the first case of Machlokes, where you had the objective principles of they had Avelus, they had like the Achilas of the Chatas and the whole procedure of the Chatas. But then there was this case where they're doing the Miluim, and now Moshe and Aaron have this Machlokes, and they have to apply the Chachman to know how to decide it.
Maybe that's going to dig the most all talk even like some of them would say travel from Hilchos and then make sure there are no redundancies.
Right. Yeah. And that's the other thing also is like Hashem, when Hashem gave Moshe the halachos, you by definition, you can't give over a law in all of its particulars, because laws are universals and there's always more particulars, so there's always going to, in other words, it's a fantasy that like, it's like, if someone said, well, why can't they just write down all of Torah's Baal Peh, so that there's no questions, is that any new statement will produce new questions, and any new case that comes up will produce new questions. So like, if you want to think of it in a more contemporary example, other than Aaron and Nadav and Abihu, which was not contemporary, like, let's say they passed on the Masorah perfectly, okay, and then electricity is invented, and now you have to have a question of how does this fit in with Shabbos? That's going to be something that you can't answer directly based on what was given to Moshe at Sinai. You have to apply the principles, and that requires an understanding of in abstract of what those principles are. So just to summarize the answer to the two questions, why you need Talmud is your Talmud Elokim who is learning Torah Lishma for Avas Hashem, so understanding it for its own sake in depth. And then the second one is to know how to apply halakha to the cases beyond what you were told initially. A new disease comes up. Is that fit under the chole for being a chole for sukkah? Or things like that. Yeah. What was that? Okay. One other thing, though, I think, is that another reason. I don't know if this is. Hold on a second. Well, let's put it this way: D'Rabbanans were structured after the halachic principles of D'Oraisas. So presumably, like knowledge of how, like understanding of how D'Oraisas work was instrumental in constructing new mitzvos and new D'Rabbanans.
Right.
So that's another reason to know the ins and outs.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, well, we're trying to figure out. This is the whole thing I want to try to figure out. The two broad questions I want to figure out here are: what is Talmud? What does the Rambam mean by Talmud? And what are the similarities and differences between what we do in Talmud study today and what the Rambam talked about in Talmud study then? Like that, those are the two major questions here. Right. So that's one thing, we don't focus on the Midos, but that it seems like that either we lost knowledge of how that works, or which is what people say, or yeah, right. Yeah, but certainly I think the thing that we do, so again, just going back to the Rambam's list there, Yavin v'yasvi achris davar merishiso. The reading I prefer is Yavin v'yasvi achris davar merishiso is the heading, and then all of these other things he lists are a part of that. I don't think achris davar merishiso is a separate thing from all these things. I think it's like the umbrella. Yeah. And this is why, like what I mentioned yesterday in the Rambam Bekius, yeah. So the end of a matter from its beginning, and that is another way of saying like how you get the conclusion from the starting points, like from the facts or from the psukim or from the I mentioned yesterday that the best work that I have seen that does what the Rambam calls Talmud is the Aruch HaShulchan, because he does start from the very beginning and he goes through all of the psukim and Tanaim, Amoraim, Gaonim, Rishonim, Achronim, and Poskim, and Minhag, and then arrives at the conclusion. And I think that's like the best thing, that's the closest thing to what the Rambam is describing. And if you look at the Rambam's description of what he did, his description at the end of the Hakdama to the Mishneh Torah, where he says he went through like all of the major sources of Torah and all the Gaonim and all the Chuvos and came out with the halacha. That's like what the Aruch HaShulchan did, only with hundreds of years later with more sources that he had to work with. He also what? Yes, he writes down the Talmud part, and he also writes all of his sources. Yeah, right, yeah. Okay, so Ketzad. So we read this last time also, but we did not read the next one. Ketzad. In fact, we should read this again. Ketzad. Hayabal umanus. How should a person divide his time? So if he was a person with a job, a craft, and he involved himself in his malacha for 3 hours in the day, uva Torah tesha, and in Torah he involved himself for 9 hours. Osan natesha kori b'shalosh mehen b'torah b'ksav. He should read for 3 hours Torah b'ksav, uva shalosh shas b'torah b'peh, and 3 hours Torah b'peh. Uva shalosh mizbonin b'da'ato l'havin davar midavar. And in the third, he should apply his mind to a conceptual understanding of one thing from another. V'divrei Kabbalah bichlal Torah b'chsav hein. So divrei Kabbalah, meaning the Nevi'im and Ksuvim, is included in Torah b'chsav. U'feirusham bichlal Torah b'peh, and their explanation is in Torah b'peh. Okay, meaning the explanation of divrei Kabbalah. And this is interesting because divrei Kabbalah, when you're talking about the perush of Torah b'chsav, we've only been talking about the halachic pirush up until now. What about, let's say, for example, midrashay agada? So, well, in other words, well, okay, let me back in a different way. Divrei Kabbalah is Nevi'im Ksuvim. So what would be the parish of Divrei Ksuvim? Most of it's not going to be halachic, right? So what parish is he referring to, I guess? And the other reason I'm asking this is because in the Rambam's Hakdama to the Mishneh Torah, he also mentioned, in addition to the halachic works that explain the Mishnah, there was also midrashim, like on Brachis, which are not halachic, So is that Torah? Right. It's just, it doesn't fit squarely into the Rambam's formal definition of Torah Shabbat Peh because it's not halachic.
I think more Talmud.
I would think, yeah.
Isn't it says I get one thing from another?
When it's not halachic.
Yeah, it's not halachic, yeah. Let's just quickly look at the Hakdama one more time, just to look. Yeah. Look at the Hakdama one more time in the Mishneh Torah, if you have. Oh, sorry, I didn't get Mishneh Torahs. Here, I'll get you one. So yeah, look at where he describes the Tanaitic works after Yehuda Hanasi in the Hakdama to the Mishneh Torah. I'm going to use my phone memory.
The Gemara will use the same mechanics as like drashing for a waka.
Not really. I mean, you don't have the midos, the Yugam midos shetor and dreshus behen as the only method, for example, of like a garta. There's just like freestyle drashos, like it can use those, but it doesn't exclusively use those. So let's see. Hold on. Where he talks about like Tosefta and stuff. Is this it? Oh, sorry. No, hold on a second. That's not it. Oh, it's here. Okay. In mine, it's chav chas. It's os chav chas. V'chibru chachmei ha-mishnah chiburim achirim lefarish divrei ha-Torah. See that? I don't know if in your letters where it is. All right. So the Chachmei Mishnah, Chavav. Okay. The Chachmei Mishnah made other compositions to explain the words of Torah. Rabbi Hoshaya, Talmido shel Rabbeinu Kadosh, Chibur Biur Sefer Brachis. Now I have to think that that's Brachis Rabbah, because there's no halachic. You don't have a halachic pirush for Sefer Brachis. I mean, maybe there's a couple halachos. Rabbi Yishmael pirush me'ela shmos ad sof haTorah, and Rabbi Yishmael explained from Eila Shmos until the end of the Torah. V'hu hanikra mechilta. So that's the mechilta of Rabbi Yishmael. V'chein Rabbi Akiva chiber mechilta. Rabbi Akiva also compiled mechilta. V'chachamim acherim chibru midrashos. So I think that those works are both halachic and agadic midrashos.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, where would the Rambam classify those? Why can't you say what? Because that's the part that is bothering me is in what sense is that Torah Shabbat Peh?
Why is it only like you're Yosei Davar Davar? Yasko Achrei Davar Miresho.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So
like
it says, oh, here's a pulp and here's how we get this midrash from the pulp.
Right, but first of all, yeah, right, right. Some other idea, and especially okay. Let me just try to put into words what's bothering me. Number one, if you're going to say that agadic midrashim are in Torah Shabbat Peh according to the Rambam, it doesn't quite fit into his definition of Torah Shabbat Peh that we read in the Pirush Mishnayos or in the Mishneh Torah. Okay, and especially let's say when he says you'll read the Mishneh Torah and know all of Torah Sheba'al Peh. He doesn't mean you'll know all the ideas of all the Agadah, right? Secondly, it's Agadah is written. The ideas of Agadah originated with the people who wrote them. It's not handed down at Sinai, so it's not Torah Sheba'al Peh in that sense either, and the third thing is it doesn't fit squarely into Talmud. I think you, if I had to choose, I would put it into Talmud, not because of the reason you mentioned of Achri Stavar Mirishiso, but because I can't put it anywhere else, and because of what the Rambam writes over here, which is, he says, V'ha'inyanas hanikrain pardes bichlal Talmud. Pardes is included in Talmud. Now, pardes, according to the Rambam, is Ma'aser Bereshis and Ma'aser Merkava, okay, which is definitely not halachic in the sense that, like, it's how to pick up a lulav, and it includes all of science according to the Rambam. Like, all of science, studying about the elements is Ma'aser Bereshis, Right. It might be that he's not right. It might be that he's not so strict, but the question is like, if you went to the Rambam to help him schedule your day, and you want to learn like Midrash for a couple hours, is he gonna like make you? Is he gonna say, okay, that's good for Torah Sheba'al Peh, but like he's strict enough to regiment it into your day, Yeah. So that's why I'm saying like as a candidate, Agadah fits most squarely into Talmud. It's just he doesn't say that. He doesn't say, now unless you say that Pardes is like. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, right. Like and I'm sure we could find books of Nach. I don't know for sure, but I feel like there's probably books of Nach without any halachic content. I mean, that we don't actually that we don't learn any new halachos from because it's Nach. It's not.
Actually,
or maybe not. I don't know.
What's that considered?
Yeah, well, that's why. Yeah, right. Like in the Rambam in Shabbos, right?
This thing like basically say from Welcome where they say, oh, he did. The king did not kill the assassin's family because of the X-Y puzzle. Although to note, the gear, what it says in Malachim does not perfectly match the words of the pasuk in the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
They're similar, so.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with that case, but I was thinking when he says in Lamed in Hilchos Shabbos, Arba Devarim Ne'emaru b'Shabbos, Shnaim b'Torah, U'Shnaim b'Divrei Sofrim, V'hein Miforashin al Yidei HaNaviim. So there were 4 things stated by Shabbos, 2 in the Torah and 2 Midivrei Sofrim, Midrabanan, and they were explained by the Nevi'im. Shebatorah Zachor v'Shamor. So in Torah, that's Zachor and Shamor. V'Shnis Parsha al Yidei HaNaviim, Kibud v'Inug. So there he holds, for example, Yeshayahu, that kabod and onig are deoraisa, but they were explained by the Nevi'im, meaning they were given halakhic form, definition. I don't know exactly what that means. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Right. I still don't know what's being done there. I think the Rav has a yahrzeit here on this topic of like what exactly the status of these types of Nevi'im explanations are. But I don't know. Oops, I closed the screen. Yeah. So
I think in that sense it makes sense as it's
right. That sense sounds like Torah Sheba'al Peh. That's true. Right. Yeah.
Like I don't know when they went up more.
Yeah.
But they Small wrote that book.
Yeah.
And like he standardized it into that.
Yeah.
Is he also into English? Like,
right. Yeah.
Also explaining this.
Right. I mean, it doesn't. You're gonna have to really stretch the definition to encompass all of Nach and all of what we do with Nach. Like again, like if I sit down and give a Mishlei shir. So here's the other argument. If I give a Mishlei shir, I would not call what I'm saying Torah Sheba'al Peh. That just doesn't make any sense to me, And when Chazal were explaining Mishlei, they were also just giving their own explanations of Mishlei. It's not like Shlomo gave them a Torah Sheba'al Peh on Mishlei.
Well, so, I think there's
yeah, I don't think the Nevi'im got a parish either, though. Like.
I don't know, they had a deal, but they hadn't been taken as well anymore.
Not always. In fact, in many cases, they didn't. You know, the nevuahs weren't going to be fulfilled in like all the Mashiach stuff. Like, yeah, that's a good example, right? It's like Rambam says all the Mashiach nevuahs, the Chachamim were not given any, even they weren't given any Kabbalah on them. You know, even the Nevi'im. Well, no, that's not even the Nevi'im themselves understood what they were talking about, but they didn't give it to us. You know, yeah.
I don't know.
So, but let's take that as a test case, right? Like, let's say like a nevuah about, let's take the lion will sleep with the lamb, right? We'll lie down with the lamb. So Rambam says that's a mashal for us getting along with our enemies. And Rashi says it's, I think, like a literal thing that they're going to, like, Meiser Bereshis is going to change, you know? So the Navi said that and did not give us a pirush. So when we are explaining it, what do we call that? Do we call that learning Torah B'chsav because Divrei Kabbalah are part of Torah B'chsav and we're like delving into it? Do we call it Torah Sheba'al Peh because it is an explanation of Torah B'chsav and the Rambam here says Pirushim Bichlal Torah Sheba'al Peh? Or do we call it Talmud because it's miscellaneous Chachma that we're like delving into, you know, with our own mind? Yeah. But that's a good test case though, right? Because there's definitively no Masorah given on it. Don't know. Yeah.
I think my question is, in the front of the point happened is in Torah B'chsav. A lot of times when you want to
yeah. Yeah. So he right. So it is funny when he says Kore B'shlosh Me'en B'Torah B'chsav. So I don't think that just means like you just like. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. I had a raya last year that I quoted to show what the Rambam means by reading Torah B'chsav. Hold on just a second. Or not to show what he means, but to show that he means more than just reading. I got it from Sukkah. I remember quoting this. I think this is the day we were downstairs. Yeah, well, you weren't here yet. Yeah. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, so I forgot why I brought this in last year. This is in Hilchos Sukkah Vav test. Kol Shivas Yamim, all 7 days. So he's talking about what you have to do in the sukkah and what you don't do. Kore b'socha sukkah. You read while you're in the sukkah. Ukeshenevin umedaktek b'masha yikra. And when you understand and are precise in what you read, yavin chutz l'sukkah, then you should understand outside of the sukkah, kadei shetihiyeh da'atom yushavas alav, so that your mind is settled. So I'm proving from there, not proving, I don't think you need to prove this, but that the Rambam does acknowledge that there are two types of Kriya in learning. There's a Kriya that is without Havana and Dikduk, and then there's a Kriya with Havana and Dikduk. So I think I wanted to show from here that when he says you're reading Torah B'chsav, then that is that does include like trying to understand the words and like delving into the Chachma. I think there's also a raya from Hilchos Shabbos. Hold on. That not I keep using the word raya, not like I have a proof, but like raya in that like a piece of evidence to factor in. Hold on. Oops. Where does he say how you should spend your Shabbos? Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, Shlosh Sudos. Keita Volmar Bibi Hotas. Yeah, Vasar Likbo Suda Shagan. Vasar Adam, she Halak Arvish Vasas or Lisanos, and sorry, another no. Is this the one I'm thinking of? Where does it say the program for what you do on? Oh, here we go. Minhagat Tzadikim. So how should you spend your Shabbos? Achilas basar shasiyas yain b'Shabbos inug hula. So eating meat and drinking wine on Shabbos. This is in Shabbos Lamed Yud. Eating meat and drinking wine on Shabbos is an enjoyment for it. That's if you can afford it. Basar likbo suda al yain b'Shabbos of Yom Tovim b'Shas Beis Midrash. You can't make a suda on wine and on Yom Tov at the time of the Beis Midrash. Elakahu minhagat tzadikim. This is the minhag of the tzadikim. Yispala Adam b'Shabbos Shachris Musaf b'Veis HaKnesses. So you daven Shachris and Musaf in shul. V'yavel lebeso v'yisod suda shnia. Then you go home and you have your second meal. V'yelech lebeis Midrash. Yikra v'yishma ada mincha, and read and listen until mincha. V'yispal mincha. And then dav mincha v'akach yikbas uda shlishis al yain. And then afterwards you go back home and establish suda shlishis on wine. V'yochal v'yishta ad motzei Shabbos. And then eat and drink until motzei Shabbos. Now, when he says you go back to the Beis Midrash and read and listen until mincha, I don't think he just means you open up a Sefer Torah and just have one person reading the text and everyone listening. I think he means you learn, right? Or you know, I don't know, like, yeah, I'm not.
Like,
What was that? Oh, well, it's gonna be different on a non-working day anyway. I mean, oh, you're saying he doesn't say like do a third? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
and then also,
Yeah.
his creator can be, there's can be all sorts of stuff because that includes Talmud, that's not very supposed to not be.
Yeah, right. Yeah, someone was just telling me about that. Does he said yeah, does the Rambam bring that? I think he brings that down. Yeah, aflikos b'ksuvim b'shavas b'shas beis midrash aser gezerah mishum bittul beis hamidrash shelo yeh kol echad yoshev b'veisav v'korev yimnam beis hamidrash. So that was a particular gezerah, right? So that you don't have to factor that into his program for Talmud Torah. But yeah, yeah. So what was the question when you said we have to back up?
I was saying, like, if you were that our packages, right, and maybe it's one from the house, which is maybe something,
Yeah,
right, and I think we need to find one from the house. When you say one from the house, what is the day?
yeah, right. Yeah, so that's why
How does that not include some form of Torah?
Yeah.
Some form of Torah?
exactly. Yeah. I mean, see, here's what would be easy. Like, what would be easy to say is to say what you said, which is that the Rambam is not so rigid, but what he means is what your focus is. You know, so for example, when you do Torah B'Chsav, you are going to be thinking about and talking about Torah B'Al Peh. You know, you're not going to be like, oh, let's read Ayin Takas Ayin, and then someone speaks up and says it's Mammon. Nope, stop. That's Torah B'Al Peh. I can't listen during this time. You know, it's so like, you know. And then the third being Torah B'Al Peh. When you're reading the Mishneh Torah, right, which is you're learning Torah B'Al Peh, and you say, "Oh, can you hand me a Tanakh?" No, slap the hand. It's not time for Torah B'Chsav right now. You know, like he's not that rigid. It's what you should be focusing on. Clearly, there is a flow from one to the other. Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to say it. But still, I feel like it's still, you know, the fact that the Rambam does take this extra step and says the Perush of Divrei Kabbalah is in Torah B'Al Peh and Pardes is in Talmud. There's more to be said about the definitions here. I just don't know, you know, we don't have much to work with. Yeah. Okay, let's. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Maybe I should look and see if the Rambam says, like, uses the phrase Perush of Divrei Kabbalah at any other point. Like, I don't know what that is. Yeah. Okay, let's read it. This is the one that we didn't read last time. Okay, this is the final thing in the Mishneh Torah here. Bamei Dvar Mamurim. So when does this program of thirds apply? B'tchilas Talmudo shel Adam, at the beginning of a person's learning. Aval k'sheyagdil b'chachma, but when a person grows in chachma, which is interesting. What does that mean? Grows in chachma. V'lo yehei. Now he gives you a shir, which is v'lo yehei tzarich lo lilmod Torah b'chsav lo lasok tamid b'Torah b'al peh, and he no longer needs to learn Torah b'chsav because presumably he knows it already, right? Like, you know, again, and that means that he knows the psukim. Yeah. Clearly not like he knows. You know, Ma'asim Rakava, he knows exactly what all the psukim mean to the very depths, right? Oh, is that a proof? Hold on. Maybe that's a proof.
What?
If Ma'asim Rakava in Yechezkel, if the perush of that is what the Ram is calling Pardes, so no, but that doesn't make sense. That just contradicts himself. What am I saying? Yeah, never mind. Yeah, okay, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, all right. Anyway. So when a person no longer needs Torah B'Chsav because he knows the psukim, and he no longer needs to be osik continually in Torah B'Al Peh, Yikra be'itim mizumanim Torah B'Chsav v'divrei hashmua. He should read at, how do you translate itim mizumanim? Yes, structured or set times, like designated times. You know. Yeah, infrequently. I thought I was just saying like, yeah, from time to time, you know. Yeah. Yeah, sounds like Mizumanim is set times. He should review Torah B'Chsav, v'divrei hashmua, kadei shelo yishkach davar midivrei Torah, so that he doesn't forget. v'yipane kol yomav l'talmud bilvad, and he should turn. Okay, I don't know if this is yipane. I don't know yipane and yifne, the difference between them, but turn all of his days to Talmud alone. I don't know. Lefi rochav libo v'yushuv dato, in accordance with those two terms again, the width of his heart and the settledness of his mind. Yeah. Right.
I mean, that sounds like that often a person wants to as is or for that how much he wants to do.
Say,
That sounds like a thing.
say again.
It sounds like to me like you say, like say, you don't want to probably looking at all for is that when the person is able to focus on more of the
Yeah.
then it's hard to how much more he focuses on it.
You're saying that's what the Lifi Rochav Libo Yushuv Dato means? I thought it just meant that he definitely goes to Talmud Bilvad, but then however far he gets is going to depend on his
knowledge.
Yeah.
Oh.
Meaning just to clarify what you. I mean, it is interesting. He did say that earlier when he's we said it in several places, right? Did he say by Nevi'im or by how to be a Navi? Yeah. Actually, I want to do one thing. I just want to read. I know one place he does say it. I want to read this one more halakha in the Mishneh Torah today, so we can have facts and then go on to the next sources tomorrow. So on the next page, I put there Hilchos Yesodei Torah Perek Daled, which is where he talks about Gemara. So in Perek, this is in Yesodei Torah Daled Yud Gimel. So after he's gone through the first four prakim, he says, "V'inyane arba'a prakim elu shebachamish mitzvos elu." So the contents of these four chapters on these five mitzvos, the five mitzvos being Anochi lo yeh lecha yichud Hashem Ava Hashem and Yiras Hashem. Heim shechachamim Rishonim korin ozo pardes. That is what the chachamim Rishonim called pardes. Okay, stop there for 1 second. See, if that's pardes, I'm okay. All right, never mind. He can't mean that it's that is pardes, because then he says, pardes. I mean, it's pardes is the highest areas within those five mitzvahs. It's not like anything about those five mitzvahs. Okay. As they say, 4 went into pardes. The alpha p Gedolei Yisrael hayu, even though they were Gedolei Yisrael, the chachamim Gedolim hayu, and they were great chachamim. Lo kulam haya behen koach leda ulhasid kol advarim al burian. Not all of them had the capacity to know and grasp all of these matters clearly. Okay, fine. So we talked about that last year, but this is the part that I want to get to. Vani Omer, I say, so Yosef, this is one of the places where the Rambam is having his own statement that is not verbatim from the Talmud or from the sources of Torah Shabbat. Ani Omer, I say, she'ein roy lehitayil b'pardes ela mishin ismala kreso lechem ubasar. I say that it is only fitting to stroll in the orchard if for someone who has filled his belly with bread and meat. V'lechem ubasar zeh, this bread and meat, who leda beur asur v'hamuter v'kiyotze behem mishar hamitzvos, is to know the explanation of the asur and mutter and other things like that from the other mitzvos. Shar mitzvos meaning the other 608, meaning not including the first 5. Or the 5 he mentioned. Even though the chachamim called these things small davar, Shari Amru Chachamim, as the Chachamim said, Davar Gadol Masim Rakava. Davar Gadol is the work of the chariot, metaphysics. But Davar Katan Havaya da Abai Varava, the discussions of Abai and Rava, the arguments of Abai and Rava. Okay, so that's where he's referring to Gemara, or what we will call Gemara. Afal Pichein, nevertheless, Ru'uyin Hein Lahakdiman. It is necessary to proceed to do Davar Katan before Davar Gadol. Shehein, because these Havayas da Abai Varava, Miyashvin dato sha'adam tchila, they settle the mind of a person first. The ode, and furthermore, shehin hatova hagdola shehishpia hakadosh baruch hu liyishuv ha'olam hazeh kedei linchol chai olam haba. They are the great thing, the great good that God bestowed to settle this world in order to inherit life in the world to come. The ekshar sheyidaim hakol gadol v'katon ish v'isha balev rachav ubalev katzar, and it is possible for everyone to know them all. For everyone to know them, whether you are great or small in Chachma, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you have you possess a wide lave or a narrow lave. Yeah. So this I was interested in because this seems to be, if Havayos Dabaya Varava fits into Talmud, which seemingly the Talmud we do is Havayos Dabaya Varava, this is where the Rambam is stating one of the purposes of Gemara, which is two purposes. Yishuv Dato Shel Adam, Yashvin Dato Shel Adam, and Yishuv Ha'olam Hazeh K'dei L'Nechol Chayim Haba. And that's kind of what I want to figure out tomorrow. And how, like, what does he mean by that? And how does Havayos Dabaya Varava do that? And how does what we do, like, do that, you know? I don't think we went into that last year. I think we just mentioned it briefly. It's funny, by the way,
I definitely don't remember.
Okay, yeah. By the way, I want you to check me on this, okay? I believe that Rav Makbili misunderstands the Rambam, okay? So on the footnote to Yud Gimel 2, he says Lihitile is Latile. Okay, that's just, it doesn't mean to, you know, whatever. It means to walk around. Davarkatan Pachos B'mala. Okay. Havayde by Varava Hamasa Vamatan Shel Gedolei Chachmei Talmud by Varava. So that's the argumentation of the greatest of the Chachmei Talmud. All right, here's the part. Shehin Miyashvin Dato Sh'alam Tchila. They settle. Oh, actually, maybe I'm misunderstanding the Rambam. All right, will you tell me? Shehin Miyashvin Dato Sh'alam Tchila. What is the Hain referring to? That's what I thought also. So he says, Tama Rishon hamitzvos misayos la'adam litchum. I don't know if you punctuate that differently. Latachum es gevulos haderech hu chai ba ulachavin es ofav es kochos gufo kedei shetiye da'ato muchana hakaras Hashem yitziva. So the mitzvos help a person to fence in the parameters of the path that he lives on and to orient his endeavors and his bodily faculties in order to make his mind prepared to recognize Hashem properly, I guess. In this sense, doing the mitzvos precedes involvement in philosophy and thoughts, right? He's saying it's about the doing of the mitzvos. No, it's talking about learning the mitzvos, right? And the by Varava. Yeah, I was shocked at this reading. Yeah. And then look what he says also. Tam sheni ha'adam tzarech la'atzev es chayav ba'asiyas hamitzvos b'hizdamos l'Hashem. Yeah, he also makes it about asiyas hamitzvos. Yeah. Yeah, he's talking about Talmud, and it's exactly, yeah. It's Beur Hasar Vamutra Behem Bishar Mitzvos. Yeah. I was shocked when I read that. Okay, so let's stop here for today, and then tomorrow we'll start with that question, and then I want to read in the Rambam's letter to one of his students, and then in the Mor Nevuchim, where he, I think, gives a good argument for what he holds the purpose of Talmud is and is not. In Chelek Gimel notes in Chelek Aleph. Yeah, there might be another one in Gimel, but the one I copied is in Aleph. 134. We're talking about why you can't just start with metaphysics. Yeah. All right, we'll stop here for today. See ya.
Thank you.